Hello and welcome to Sound Financial Bites. My name is Paul Adams, your host of Sound Financial Bites and CEO of Sound Financial Group. I am really happy all of you are here today because we're starting a new season of our podcast. That's right. We're going to be breaking ourselves up into seasons to help the high income earning professional and the entrepreneur better understand their money, bite-sized chunks of knowledge, because we're hearing many of you are going back many podcasts picking up on things we've talked about before. As a result, we want to do everything we can to support you by taking our newest stuff and packaging them into seasons so that you kind of end up with little mini discourses of learning. In that effort, I'm super excited to be joined in studio today by Mr. Cory Shepherd, co-host of Sound Financial Bites and president of Sound Financial Group.
I was wondering if I was ready to ask you, what does a guy have to do to get a co-host title around here?
Well, yeah. Well, I think, it's up to Leah, our chief of staff, but so far she's the one that keeps calling you a co-host in the promotion of the podcast, or she calls you the special guest over and over again. I'm
secretly staging a coup inside of Sound Financial Group to take over the podcast, so be ready at the end of the season for the first episode where I'm listed as host as Paul is the guest. That's where we're headed.
Yeah. That'd be great. If what that could mean is him doing all the extra work on it, I am perfectly fine with just dropping in as the guest.
No, I want to keep you doing that part.
Yeah, I'll be key grip. That'll be my new credits on the podcast. So today, Cory, we're starting this season around concepts for the white coat window.
Right.
And in this episode, this is episode 113. What is the white coat window? Could you just start to pull that apart a little bit for our audience, what you and I created now about 2 years ago, we've been talking to clients about. We've dripped it on the podcast, but this is the first time we're really making an entire subject matter season over it.
So the white coat window is this idea that physicians especially, although we're going to talk in a few minutes about why not just physicians, but physicians especially have this phenomenon where their income jumps in a few key places after med school when they start residency, and then when they finish their residency or fellowship and graduate into becoming an attending physician and get that big income bump, they have the opportunity to make a set of financial decisions that really get them set up for life to, it's the difference between barely making it in retirement and be worth $10 million plus by getting those decisions handled in that window of time right after those income jumps happen.
Well, and to put in perspective, just so people are not as familiar with people that have gotten a medical education.
Oh, yeah.
And
Thank you.
Is what does that income differential look like? So let's just talk about it so there's a period of time where physicians are in school, they're making no money or very little.
Going negative $50,000 a year in some cases.
Oh, yeah, because you're paying for med school as you go. So you're running backward.
Right.
Then you become resident.
And depending on your specialty and the part of the country that you're in, somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year is the salary.
Which is a big bump from zero.
And yet at the same time, when you calculate it on the per hour of how much they work, it's actually way less than minimum wage most of the time.
We're not even talking $15 minimum wage. We're talking like below that.
And right.
And then depending on what they go into as full-time practice, Cory, what does it look like when their income jumps after that?
Depending on the specialty or area of medicine, 150, 200, 500, a million, million and a half, multiple, depending on what kind of specialty surgery they might be in. So any kind of realm, but 2 to 3 to 10x what their income was before in residency.
And here's why I think this is so great for us to pull apart. We originally designed these set of conversations for Cory's clients, many of whom are physicians, specialty physicians, general practitioners, and even some doctors are still working their way through residency and school, and they'll get a triage meeting with Cory, and he'll help set them up for what it's like to come out of that. What we realized in looking at all the clients we both worked with over the years, who are physicians, we noticed a very unique thing is that there's a window of time, 6 months to 1 year after they have this large income increase, where the decisions, the habits and practices that they take on right in that window could be the difference between them barely limping over the finish line and being able to retire with a fraction of what they made. So they're making $300-400 a year, and then they get over the finish line with $3 million, and they're just kind of limped it in, kind of just barely got over it, and they've got about $120,000 a year of annual income in their old age, which is a lot less than the $300 they're making. Still better than 90% of people, but certainly some opportunity to build real wealth was compromised by some decisions, and we've just noticed those decisions all happen in this less than 1 year window, we call the white coat window, after their income increase.
And I've also realized that it's one of the hardest periods of a person's life to buckle down and think clearly about those decisions. You know, Paul, you gave me the opportunity to explain a little bit and then give some background for people who aren't familiar with doctors, and thank you for that, because I'm just so ingrained with it going through medical school with my wife. And that's why it's exciting that we're here in studio together. Is we just moved to Chicago for her residency. So seeing all of the pieces of that transition that she and her colleagues have to make, there are so many things to think about right now. And then once they're moving on to their fellowships and onto their, full-time, well, they're already working way more than full-time, but their eventual long-term careers, they're thinking about a new job and a new hospital and actually being good at what they do. And then there's this whole other set of crucial decisions to make. It can be overwhelming.
And I think what we've also seen is sometimes people just, as things get busy, they just don't. Now, they are making decisions.
Right.
But they don't make active, well thought out decisions with any kind of philosophy or design. Again, not because they're bad people, but simply and only because they're out of time. Now, we're going to go a little deeper into this white coat window. What are the things we need to watch for? But let me, if I may, take just a moment, Cory, and just for our audience, so that if they're not in the medical profession, that we be able to talk a little bit about how they are impacted by these same things.
Well, yeah, everyone has a white coat window. And just the same as any doctor who's maybe missed their white coat window, they can still look at trying to reopen it.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So if let's just talk about a lot of other people we work with are business owners, entrepreneurs. We've had a chance multiple times to speak to the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is an organization for business owners getting together. I'm proud to be a member of that organization. Minimum standard, how much revenue you have to have in your company, minimum of $1 million. It takes several $1,000s a year to be a member, and they require active participation. So you got to be not only a business owner, but somebody with some autonomy to actually be able to take enough time out of your month every month to be able to think about working on your business rather than just working in your business. And entrepreneurs run into it, executives run into it, where there's always this unique time where we were making less money. Cory and I have both been through it.
Right.
We're making less money, and suddenly something changes in your career, changes in your business, changes based upon some knowledge set that you built, and suddenly you now have this large spike in income. And when you have that large spike in income, most people don't think about it. So, which, by the way, if you guys hear any background noise while we're doing this, the studio is actually being painted as we speak. So you may hear like a ladder clang or two. We're not doing extra home improvement work on the side. The painting got arranged. Cory was in town. We're doing this darn recording anyway. So if you hear a ladder slide or maybe somebody fall off a ladder outside of our studio, sorry about that.
It's an illustration that we're never making decisions in a vacuum. Like, life is always happening around us.
Yes.
And so
we just arranged
it
it as a metaphor
right.
for that. So, but let's take it not the physician who's got that big bunch of decisions all stacked, but let's take it as the business owner who maybe was just barely scraping by, hardly able to pay themselves anything, and now their inventory built large enough, or they're done hiring a lot of people, and now it's running smooth and profitably, and now they're making $700,000-800,000 a year. That is what we might refer to as your white coat window. It's just so easy for us to use the medical profession as a background from it because it's predictable when theirs is going to happen. They actually have the greatest likelihood to take good advantage of it because they not only know that it's coming, but they know when it's coming well in advance. They can go like, 6 years from now. So how many years physicians spend in school?
A long time. 12.
Yeah, said from very deep personal experience.
Right. So they've got going to undergrad like most, plus another 4 years of medical school, and then they're moving positive on income at least, although it's not quite their full income level. But you've got usually 2-3 year residency, and then most professions are in the medical world are still now doing fellowships beyond that. So, we're looking at our normal 12 plus another 10
of school,
easy, of training. So
training.
You may, if you're not taking loans to pay for school, you're still getting paid below market rates. So it's still costing you something.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so the drawback is for all the rest of us that are not physicians, a physician actually has the greatest amount of autonomy and control. And where they get into trouble, we've talked about in some of our past podcasts. One of my favorites, I'm going to have to find the episode number for you, but it was watch what you say, it could cost you millions. And part of the reason why it can cost you millions is because people will say to their spouse, like, I'm so sorry you're suffering through all of this extra work that I'm doing right now, because they are, the spouse that's not becoming a physician still has a lot of work, as Cory can tell you. And then coupled with that, we have this real issue of the spouse that is working. Say that differently. The spouse that is working through all of this is looking at the spouse who's not getting the degree, who's not getting all this extra education, who won't be earning the income, saying, I'm sorry you're suffering through all of this. As soon as we get through this, I will buy you a really killer car. We will take some great vacations.
What she's going to buy me. I haven't gotten that.
I know that's
you got
to get some promises in place. Yeah, but we'll get a bigger house. We're going to do whatever we're going to do. And it's because, we end up in trouble because our balance sheet has to cash the checks that our mouths write. That was number 32. Watch what you say, it could cost you millions. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to that, I kind of give you some context for it. Right. Physicians know it's coming. If you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, you don't necessarily know when you're going to get that really large income pop. So now we have to talk about what are the things that you might see in your life that tip you off, that you could be in the white coat window even if you're not a physician.
So number one is looking for any kind of spike in income. Anything to you that feels like you just won the lottery. Which could include winning the lottery. Someone who just, like people who win the lottery, a doctor doesn't feel that different than someone who just got a big, money that we're not used to having, and all of a sudden falls onto our balance sheet. Our brain has to get used to that. And that's why lottery winners are often in worse financial shape than before they won the lottery some amount of years later.
Yeah, it's something like it's over 80% of lottery winners actually claim bankruptcy. People that were financially solvent before in some way file a BK in 5 years or less. So let's think about that for a moment. So the things that they might feel like they won the lottery, but if you're also one of those entrepreneurs that did it over time, lots of hard work, all of that, you might be saying to yourself, hey, I think we can afford now the bigger house. We should look at getting that other car.
So look at your internet search history, and if you've been Zillowing bigger homes, if you've been on Lexus or BMW, you may be in the white coat window. This is like Jeff Foxworth.
Yeah. Here's your sign. Yep. So it could be, hey, we're thinking about getting a bigger house. Watch for yourself saying, we really need such and such, because you'll actually start building, much like we talked about all the way back in episode 32, you'll start building the quote unquote need for things where you are causing a cognitive liability ahead of the financial one, where for yourself, you're saying, I should have this, I should have that. You're looking at what other people have. You're shoulding all over yourself. And that shoulding is causing you to create a cognitive liability that your balance sheet is going to have to fulfill on.
Here's another one is, if you find yourself throwing money at problems as the sole way to solve them. So, which is a sign that you've got this sudden wiggle room in your budget that you didn't have before. The one that I discovered was, I like to cook a lot. It works out for my wife in med school because she gets to eat really good meals, and I know the key to her heart is through her stomach. So, right. And so I used to say, oh, what do I want to cook? I'll just go to the store. And I found I have a talent for spending more cooking in than some people can spend going out. And I realized that it didn't have to be that way. And if I just took a second to look in my pantry, like, what do I have available? I had to be more creative to solve the problem. And some of my best meals came out of working with what I already had instead of just going to the store and filling out a list. So thinking about money as the sole way that you're solving a problem. Oh, I don't have time for that. Just throw money at it. That might be the white coat window.
Yep. Other things you may want to be aware of is anytime you're using the word afford. We can afford this or that now where we couldn't in the past. A good gut check for you, and we're going to talk more about this in a future episode here, about 2 episodes down the road. But the very simple one of what percent of your income is going toward assets? And if you've had a significant increase in income and yet 20 or 25% of that is after tax is not going to assets, then you may have yourself in a position where you have made some decisions already. They're crowding your window. They're closing your window. And that can be reopened. In fact, many of you who we know are listeners are high-income executives and entrepreneurs. It's actually easier for you in some ways than for the physician. Because oftentimes, if you're a physician listening to this, you know the deal. You get your specialty, you're making $300,000-$400,000 a year. And then unless you do something innovative or you end up running a medical group or something else, you're probably inflation-adjusted increases from there forward. Whereas if a 35-year-old executive gets to where they're making $500,000 a year, they'll probably be making $1 million a year 10 years later because they can continue to stack skills, network, identity, raises, move to a new company.
Right.
That doesn't happen the same way for physicians. So you can reopen your window with income, but we encourage everybody to open their window with habits and practices, which is what we're going to cover on the rest of this season. Is what do you do on your balance sheet? What do you do in your spending? What do you do in your overall financial life to put yourself in the position that you can monopolize on your window? Hey, everyone. I want to let you know I'm interrupting this podcast for a good reason. If you're someone who's enjoying this podcast, if our philosophy is helping you better think about money, then this offer is for you. We've opened up a financial inquiry call for our listeners of Sound Financial Bites. Our financial inquiry call is 15 minutes where one of our team will ask you some key questions, understand your concerns, and if appropriate, schedule you for a philosophy conversation with myself or Sound Financial Group's president, Cory Shepherd. If you email us at info@sfgwa.com with inquiry in the subject, we will reply back to you with a link to our team calendar so you can schedule a call at a time that's least invasive for you. Even if we're not a fit, the team member having the call with you will point you in the direction of resources we have that can help you in whatever the next step for you in your financial journey is. Now back to your podcast already in progress. Cory, anything else that you would add is people are going to be listening through this season, and they're going to be listening through the lens of the white coat window, the increase in income that people have enjoyed at some point. They may have capitalized on it, or they may not have. How are they going to feel, or what are they going to discover as they go through this season?
I think that, our culture of consumerism has a big pressure to spend the money that you have. So if you're feeling, oh, I'm making X, so now I should have, or I should be. The reserved doctor parking space should have this car in it. The executive, I own a business like this. I should look like this. That's all society. We tell a lot of our clients to stop shoulding on yourself. And that's really big here is, put your strategy together. For doctors, it's easy for me to say, look, I know school was stressful and maybe you didn't have everything you want, but think about living on what you were living on for the last 5 years. Are you okay? You're not dying, right? You were okay physically, and we can put a spending plan together that you can still spend way more on life than you used to and have it be way less than everyone else and still feel really good about yourself and still build assets on the side.
Yeah. And so I want to close this episode so we can get into the rest of the season with a story. And it had to do with a friend of mine and I were both, we worked together as advisors on one particular physician client who was a cardiologist. He had just come out. He's making great income. I think his like first pay package without bonus was $375 a year. Now this is going all the way back to like 2007. And he moved to one of these markets in the Southwestern United States that was really, really hot real estate wise. And we had a long talk with him. Like, you've never had this much money before. You've been living on literally like $65,000 a year up till now. Put yourself in a position where you're super conservative with your money. Save $100 a year and just let everything, because we don't know what's going to happen. Save $100,000 a year. You can still expand your lifestyle greatly over where you were before, but he couldn't do it. He had felt like, and this happens the same thing, entrepreneurs scrapping it together, physicians scrapping it together, as if they had tightened their belt so tightly. It's a little bit like what happens after you go on a crash diet. Financially speaking, they get out and they get after it. And so he bought a home with little to no money down. We're going to talk about that, but for like $900,000. And in the city he was in, that bought a lot of house. He also put 2 brand new cars in the driveway. And he had also used up some cash, I think, on a second home. But it was like he was cash poor suddenly, even though he'd built up some assets. And then 2008 happened. And when 2008 happened, actually his income wasn't affected that badly. His investments were down. His income went from like $375. I think they had to modify something in the pay package for all the physicians, and he was down at like $350. And now suddenly he couldn't pay his bills. And he's on the phone with me and the other professional he's working with saying, I got to cash things out. I got to get... And we had to talk him off the cliff. Like, here's the thing. This is temporary. Unless you have some enormous amount of malpractice or you literally punch the head of the hospital in the face as a physician, you're not likely to lose your job. But you made a series of decisions here that put you in the position that you're in. You could have been, and this is why it resonated for me ever since then. I remember saying to him in the moment, you could have been like in the eye of a storm, like when a hurricane is crushing everybody else, and you could have been peacefully in the eye of the storm watching all of this happen. And the only reason you're having to participate in this economic downturn, the only reason you're even feeling it at all, is because of the decisions you made that put you in a position where you closed your own window. And what we want for all of you as you dig into this episode, as your incomes climb, as new opportunities present themselves, is that we're going to give you the knowledge that will be required for you to maximize your income, your increase in income, and your balance sheet so that we put you in a position that you're able to actually design and then build a good life. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks so much for being here, Cory.